going after the Democrats at the L. Smith dinner? Because he's got Trump derangement syndrome, and I couldn't believe the shit he was saying.
Really?
You remember? Did you remember the jokes he did? He goes, the media and the Democrats say that democracy's on the ballot and they have to protect it, and they had to protect it so much they did a coup. And I was like, fucking Jim Gaffigan.
And he's not for Trump? I have no question.
He's Trump derangement. In fact, I used to, kind of so I know him, and he never would talk about politics because he wants to have the biggest audience. And then, but Trump, I can't bite my tongue. I've got to say something, And I was like, the time to say something was when Barack Obama was ruling as a neocon, a tool of Wall Street, and that's what made workers desperate enough to vote for Donald Trump. That's when you should have said something, when the Democratic Party stopped being Democrats. But now you're going to say something. You're upset at the symptom instead of the disease.
At the result of what you allowed.
Yes.
So that was actually something I thought a lot about last night at the fascist rally that I spoke at. It was so huge. And I know, Trump is always talking about his crowd size, and, there's a debate about it. But last night there was no debate. I mean, it was crazy. Midtown was just like a mass of people.
Yeah.
It was like Times Square in New York City.
Yeah, I was there. I was in Manhattan yesterday. I saw it. Yeah, I was on my way to some kind of peace rally or something in the Valley, hosted by Scott Ritter.
Oh.
Judge Napolitano was there.
Oh, I love Judge Napolitano. So the crowd was just so overwhelming yesterday that I did ask myself, I think Trump's going to win, just objectively. I want him to win, but I think he's going to win. But then I thought, if I were the Democrats, I would pause and ask, what is this? It's not just that, half the country's evil. Maybe there's more to it. Does anyone ever stop? I mean, I try and understand, why do people love Obama? Why do they love Biden? I mean, I do try to understand. I mean, I think you should. They're Americans, right?
I understand why people liked Obama.
Me too.
Or loved him.
Me
right?
too.
He made me feel good when he spoke.
Of course.
Even though I was aware of the things he was doing, when he gave a speech, I was like, I feel a little bit better. He was really good at that.
And every American's like, slavery really was bad, and there are the disparities between black and white, and here, like, all these white people voted for a black president. Maybe we're gonna move beyond that. Maybe we could stop talking about race and start talking about economics. That's what I thought, just personally. Not that I'm a race guilt guy, I'm not, but I would like to have a conversation about something real, like economics and war.
That's exactly where I'm at, and that's so I had this guy on Michael Parenti's son, Christian Parenti. He wrote this paper recently, and it was about the birth of wokeness. Like, some people think, it started, 5 minutes ago. Some people think it started 20 years ago. He said it started after World War II, and it was the conflation or the coming together of the NGOs, like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, with the intelligence community. And what they did, they didn't have a problem when Martin Luther King wanted to integrate lunch counters because that didn't cost them anything, But when he shifted against the Vietnam War, and then he did a Poor People's March on Washington, D.C. He didn't do a Black People's March.
Right.
He did a Poor People's March. And of course, they killed him when he was supporting a sanitation strike, right? So it was the economics. And so it's been the goal of the NGOs and the intelligence community to decouple social movements from the class analysis and the class and the economics, and just push it all into culture. And that's been forever. And I'm like, they just like anti-war. In the 60s, they used to be regular people, buttoned down.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it was all hippies and the smelly people. And where's
Charles Manson.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's not so and now it's led up to this, and I sniffed this out about the trans issue, right? Because everybody was on board with gay rights. Everybody,
Right.
you know, they went in the '90s. They used to be second-class citizens, and now they're not, right?
Right.
But so then they had to and I saw that the head of the Fink, the head of BlackRock,
Larry
right?
Fink, yeah.
Larry Fink. I saw him giving this speech. I'm like, oh, that's what this is.
Larry Fink is a trans rights activist now.
Oh, all those. I'm like, this son of a bitch is so he's out there raping the planet and
Yes.
screwing over workers
True.
and the middle class.
100%.
And so he gets to wrap himself in this patina of virtue by saying, I'm for trans rights and we have to force it down people's throat. I mean, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And that's when I knew what was happening, because this is not a grassroots. Didn't come from the grassroots up. And this is something that even turns the gay community against each other.
Of course.
So this is all about divide and conquer, and it's been about. So that's what wokeness is about. It's about divide and conquer, and it didn't just start. It's been going on since World War II, and the last thing they want you to do is have a class analysis. And that's what, so why is it the people who voted for Bernie Sanders then voted for Donald Trump, right? There's a class analysis that would go along with that. Michael Moore, of all people, in 2016, I don't know if you ever saw, there's a video of him giving that speech about why do you think that these people aren't all racist? These are people who voted for Barack Obama twice. These are people who voted for Bernie Sanders. Why are they attracted to Donald Trump? Because he stood there and said, if you ship their jobs to Mexico, I'm going to put a tariff on you and you're not going to be able to sell a car. And that no other politician would say something like this. Is Michael Moore giving that analysis, right? And so you haven't heard him say that stuff since, because he got spanked.
Okay,
right?
so there's so many threads here, and I want to get to that because I'm fascinated by AOC. Same thing, and a couple of others who should be, I don't know, Trump supporters necessarily, but they should be making common cause with Trump on the promise of a fair economic system, and they're not, and why. But let me just get back to your great point that wokeness was used as a tool by the people making the most money going back 80 years.
Yes.
So this is why Malcolm X had a short lifespan.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you
right.
actually listen to Malcolm X speeches,
Well,
they're not about race.
So, well, he went and had an awakening.
Exactly.
He had an awakening. It's like, oh, there's white Muslims.
Exactly.
And he realized that wasn't the game. And as soon as that happened, he had a short life. And so same thing when Martin Luther King decided it was about class and not about race. No, they want it to be about race. And so you've seen the studies, I'm sure, that, after Occupy Wall Street, so you had the Tea Party, right? They were upset about what happened during the economic crash in Wall Street and the government bailing them out and kicking people out of their houses and making sure the way I said it was Barack Obama made sure the bankers got their bonuses while he kicked 5.1 million families out of their homes. Not people, 5.1 million families. And then you find out that he got more money from Wall Street than John McCain did. And you find out that...
Did he really?
Yes. And that there was an email from Wall Street, from Citigroup, to the Barack Obama campaign with a list of people they wanted in his cabinet. Every person on that list ended up in his cabinet. And the reason I know that, because that got released by WikiLeaks, and that's why they've been trying to kill Julian Assange ever since. And so they all are working. He wasn't a departure from George W. Bush, Barack Obama, just his skin color. He took us from 2 wars to 7. He gave us a right-wing healthcare plan, which came out of the Heritage Foundation, which is the same people I gave you Project 2025. And, he gave us Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. So, and he deported all those. He dropped more bombs than George Bush, and nobody noticed. And that's why they wanted to have Kamala Harris. That was their first choice. The donor class was Kamala Harris. They thought we'd have a female Barack Obama, and that's a good face for imperialism, right? Because we have a black woman bombing and stealing resources and doing neoliberal and neocon policies. That's perfect. And that you couldn't get a vote. So then they had to go to their second most reliable person, which was Joe Biden. That's exactly how it worked. I don't know if you remember, but they coronated her on Martha's Vineyard. She's going to be our candidate, and they thought they had the black Barack Obama, but she couldn't get a vote. She has no political talent, right? And so then they forced her on Joe Biden as the vice president, and then of course they did a coup, just like Jim Gaffigan said at the Al Smith dinner. They had the debates way earlier than they normally would, so they would give them enough time to install Kamala Harris, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't know how I got off on this tangent, but yes, we know that after Wall Street, after Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party, then the major newspapers, the mentions of racism and white supremacy, people have studied this. I'm not making this up. I'm just quoting studies. It went through the roof. And why is that? That's because, as Chomsky taught us, the newspapers aren't there to inform you. They're to manufacture consent. And one of the great ways to manufacture consent for the establishment is to divide and conquer. It's been there ever since World War II. It's been divide and conquer. And that's exactly what they did. So they got everybody that's what identity politics is. And it's got everybody who you identify with your skin color. It's the opposite of Martin Luther King. It's the opposite of judge someone by the content of their character. And so now everybody's identified with their gender or their sexual preference or their skin color or their ethnicity, and they got us all siloed off and split up. But what we need to do is what Christian Smalls did on Staten Island when he started the first labor union for Amazon, right? So here's a black guy on Staten Island, and what is he doing? He's organizing a bunch of Trump voters to go against Jeff Bezos and the machine, and he won. Right? And he didn't do that by saying, hey, who here's a gun nut? All right, you are out. Who here supports the trans? You don't? You're out. Okay, who here? No, that's not how you organize, right? Who's left? Okay, now I'm going to organize with the rest of you. That's not how it works. You go, we have an economic interest, we share a common economic interest, and we share a common enemy, and that enemy is Jeff Bezos and the establishment. Who's with me? And they were with them. And, if the funny thing is, when you win a union like that, or you win economic gains for everybody, the people who disproportionately are benefited are the people of color. If you give black people have more medical debt per capita than white people, if you give everybody health care, that's going to help them more, right? So you give everybody health care, it helps the trans community. You give everybody a living wage, a strong union, that helps everybody more. And the people who are more disproportionately helped are the people who you normally consider the most vulnerable in your society. So that's the irony. But they want us fighting over things that just help your you fight over trans rights, fight over reparations, fight over this, instead of fight over something that helps everybody. And that's what divide and conquer is, and that's why we are where we are, Tucker.
Well, it's such a smart analysis, and I just want to say for the record, I agree with every single word that you said. But first, it's just incredibly easy to divide people, from outside. Mm-hmm. It really is, especially along the lines of immutable characteristics, because they don't change, and so the conflicts tend to be irresolvable. I mean, you can go from a Bernie voter to a Trump voter to a whatever's next voter. You can change you cannot change your skin color. And so once you create those divisions, they're permanent, and you wreck your society. But I just detect in your worldview something that you don't see very often, which is universalism. Your instinct or your sense of the world seems to be based on the idea that there are principles that apply to everyone, regardless of what they look like. And I thought that's what Western civilization was based on. That's Christianity, by the way. But I don't see people approaching questions with that assumption as much anymore.
No, because they're propagandized to do the other. And the American people, I've said this, my friend Nick Cruz says this, Americans are the most propagandized people in the entire world, and they don't have any idea that they are. At least people in China know they're being propagandized. Right, that's right. The people in the old Soviet Union knew it was propaganda. People in America turn on Anderson Cooper, turn on Rachel Maddow, Sean Hannity. They think they're getting the truth. They really do. They think, hey, don't you think it's a little weird when Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow are saying the exact same thing about Ukraine? Don't you think that's weird?
Well, yes, in fact, I did. It's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. And so, I try to remind people that, that you got fired, not because you were going along with the wars and telling the lies of the wars. When you were going along with the Iraq War, they couldn't give you enough TV shows, right? You were on CNN, MSNBC, your number one guest was Rachel Maddow, then you had the number one show on Fox. It was when you started to tell the truth. They don't fire you for lying about wars. They fire you for telling the truth about the wars. And that's just the same reason why Julian Assange was in prison. He wasn't in prison because he lied about the war machine. He was in prison because he told the truth. And that's what people need to realize. And I ask people when I have these conversations with my old liberal friends from Hollywood, the ones who still talk to me, and I'll say, is there anything you hear on cable news that you don't believe? Is there anything? And you know what? They never say anything back. They never say, well, I don't believe that. They never say anything. They just change the subject or move on to something else.
You really think they're just accepting the whole sandwich?
Yes.
Just swallowing without chewing. Just
yes. And that was the beginning of the end for me was when I wouldn't go along with Hillary Clinton because I've always been a liberal progressive. And I supported Bernie Sanders. I thought we were really close to doing something. At that convention in 2016 in Philadelphia, I was there, and you walked into the convention hall, and half the people in there wanted to overthrow the Democratic establishment. Half the people there wanted to get corporate money out of politics. And there was lots of friction. They were turning the lights out. They were using sound cans. And it really felt like we were about to do something, right? And then I went to the last convention just this year in Chicago, and it was like a Stepford's Wives convention. It was brainwashed, brain dead, go-alongs. Nobody had a thought in their head. No, they were there cheering on billionaires and cheering on the war machine, and it was gross.
Doing well, brother. How are you, man?
Billionaires on stage from Oprah talking about how she's a victim of sexism, racism. That was one of the funniest things. That's like Oprah, since I've been in college, she's been a highly touted celebrity with her own television show. There might have been a time in her life when she was discriminated against, but boy, she certainly made up for it. And for her to be the voice of that was really disgusting. And then you had, Pritzker come on stage, I'm a real billionaire, and people are cheering like, is this the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party and so that's what happened with Bill Clinton.
How did they treat you, by the way, at the convention?
I couldn't stay there long. I had a pass to be on the floor. It depressed me to the point of almost tears. And I would go up to people, I would go up to delegates, and I would say, does it bother you that the party who's putting democracy on the ballot threw out 14 million ballots and installed Kamala Harris? And to a person, they would all say, there was a process. She followed the process. They didn't care. Nobody cared. They don't care anything. They didn't care that she didn't get a vote. They don't care that they threw out the guy who did get a vote. They don't care that they were lied to about his his dementia for years. They didn't mind nothing. And they were all about, and they talk about abortion at the convention like it's like it's Christmas. And, like, hey, I always, like the old liberals, I always was like, let's make abortion safe, legal, and rare, right? And they're like, no, let's cheer it on like it's Christmas. I'm like, that's weird. It's like cheering on amputation. Like, yay, you get to get your amputation. I'm like, no, that's something that's, if you have to have it, I'm glad it's available, but that's always a sad day. Anyway, so that's where...
What is that about? I really noticed that because I've been covering this stuff since '92. And Clinton, I've always been...
Yo, what's up, brother?
I'm just going to say that. Agree or disagree with me, but I feel that way. But I remember Clinton really kind of...
I have enough money to have the stream for you.
But we think in these circumstances it should be legal. And I'm so struck by the change. What is that?
Well, I had a conversation at the convention with someone who's... she's in this women's rights organization. She was the head of it, and I don't want to mention her name, but I was saying, well, I've always been pro-choice. I don't want a G-man in between doctor and a patient.
Yeah.
I trust women. I trust doctors to make that decision without a government stepping. And she's like, well, that's not good enough. You have to be pro-abortion. And I'm like, that just seems... I'm like, well, what's your message to someone like me who's pro-choice but not pro-abortion? And she's like, well, that's a longer conversation. I'm like, you don't have a message for me?
Are you serious? She said you have to be pro-abortion?
Pro-abortion? It blew me away. And this is someone I like and respect, and it's very funny and all that stuff. But I didn't see it coming because I've been saying, because during COVID, they went from being pro-choice to pro-abortion, which I noticed. Right? I know, because it sounds so weird coming off your lips. I'm pro-abortion. No, you're supposed to be pro-choice. You're supposed to be bodily autonomy, which they don't say anymore because they were all for the mandated emergency medical treatment, which was COVID vaccines with no long-term studies. They were for making people take that. And so that's the exact opposite of bodily autonomy, something that I've said my entire life. Everybody who called themselves a liberal has said, well, they stopped saying that because they're not for bodily autonomy. They're for the government being able to mandate an experimental medical treatment while they're lying to you about it. But they're pro-abortion. And I would say on my show that nobody's pro-abortion, and then I met someone at the convention who was, and I was just like, whoa. It still kind of blows me away.
Natural disasters, wars, political conflicts, the recent threatened dock worker strikes at ports around the country. All of these are reminders that things that we take for granted in this country, like medicine, are all dependent on a long and fragile supply chain. If something happens to that supply chain, you and your family will not be able to get things that you need to live. So right now seems like a pretty good time to stock up on essentials for when the next unexpected disaster hits, because it's coming. We know that. That's why we're partnering with Gyges Medical, which can supply you and your family directly to your home with things you need. Quick, easy, affordable solutions for problems that require life-saving medication for ones in your family in the case of an emergency. So the Gyges case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications to treat the most common and potentially deadly bacterial infections, for example, and then a whole host of add-on medicines from ivermectin to EpiPens, depending on what you and your family may need. How hard is it to get this? Not hard. The process is quick and easy. You fill out an online form, you consult with their physician, and you receive your medications through a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular price. It is all totally above board, completely legit, and in the case of a disruption to our supply chain, which again could very easily happen, it could mean the difference between surviving and not. So we recommend it. Go to Gyges.com, use code Tucker at checkout for a discount on your order. That's Gyges, Jase.com, promo code Tucker.
You have any idea what that is? It blows me away too. Again, and I'm coming at it from exactly the opposite perspective. Like I've always disagreed with the pro-choice position. But I also thought when I would listen to Clinton, I'd be like, I get it. I get why people feel, 13-year-old girl raped, she's got a disabled, the baby's disabled. I mean, I understand why people are like, yeah, she should have an abortion or have the right to. This is such a different message, and I just don't know where that came from or why. That it's just really
about Hunter's laptop. That's why they did Russiagate, which was concocted by the Hillary Clinton campaign, and that's why the FBI lied to the FISA court 17 times so they could get a phone tap on Donald Trump's phone and his entire organization, and they still couldn't find a crime that they wanted to impeach him over because they had to find a crime that they weren't also complicit in. That's why it took so long. So
fair point.
And for me saying, when I had Cornel West on my show, I tried to impress upon him that, don't you see, you don't have to like Donald Trump, right? I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but what you see they're doing to Donald Trump, they would do to anybody. And when I say they, I mean the establishment and the handful of billionaires that actually run the Western world and our media. They would, and own the Congress. They would do to anybody who stood up. Look what they did to Bernie Sanders, right? So when there was a chance that Bernie Sanders was going to become the nominee, they immediately Russiagated him. They immediately called him a sexist. They immediately called his followers racist and sexist and violent. They did the exact same thing. And that's what I tried to impress upon. I'm like, they would do this to you. They would do this to Bernie Sanders. They would do it to me. They would do it to Jill. They do it to Jill Stein. They'll do it to anybody who they can't control. And Cornel West's response to me was to call me a Trumper. That was one of the saddest things. That was one of the saddest things.
Because I know Cornel, and he's a very complicated person, but in some ways a good-hearted person.
In many ways.
Yeah, he is. And he's smart. He's legit smart.
But he has lived in, he told me that we live in two different worlds. And I was like, we sure do. You live in an ivory tower your entire life. That's true. I come from a blue-collar background, and my whole life, and I'm out there with the people all the time. I tour the country constantly, and I do meet and greets and meet hundreds of people every night. And they look at me in the eye, and some of them with tears in their eye, and they thank me for what I'm doing and for what I'm saying. And even though they don't agree with me politically, like I would say half my audience is to traditional liberals, the other half are libertarians or conservatives, and ex-military. You know, I remember most recently I had a guy said, you know, I've served in three different countries and 3 different wars, and I watched your show and I woke up and now I realize what's going on. And those are the kind of things that, you know, kind of never leave me. I've had military guys try to give me their medals, and you know, it's overwhelming emotionally for me to meet these people. And so that's that's the world I come from, and that's not the world the media comes from. That's not the world that Cornel West comes from. And
but because Cornel West is black, he kind of has a trump card where he can say, you've never suffered like I have. You don't know what it's like.
I don't know what it's like to live and work in Harvard and Yale and Princeton. That's got to be miserable.
No, you're so right. So let me just get back to what I wanted to ask you a couple minutes ago, which is the people who should know better, and Cornel West is certainly in that category.
Well, look at what happened during COVID. That was my big beef when I had him on, because he wouldn't say a peep during COVID. I'm like, you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
No, well, now he is saying something. Like he picked up Bobby Kennedy's, but you know, I was like, you know, where were you when, you know, he's always, I stand in solidarity with workers, and I'm like, well, they fired 70,000 healthcare workers in one state alone because they wouldn't take an experimental medical treatment. Where were you then, right? 41% of black-owned businesses closed permanently during COVID. Where were you then? Where were you screaming about that? Where was your solidarity then? And so I don't want to pick on Cornel West. He's got a lot of, I like him.
Oh yeah, no, I agree, and I like.
But it was a very big letdown for me.
But you're right. So my question is not even to get personal about it. Or AOC is someone who, you know, has called me a white supremacist 1,000 times, but I still look at her and I say, this is a woman with talent. I think she does have talent. I'm sure she'll disavow me for saying that. But she's also said a few things over the years where, like, you could be closer to the right track than you are, but she seems to have sold out immediately. And I would also say, not to be mean, but Bernie Sanders, same thing. Like, what? And Michael Moore, of all, not only was he, you know, on a populist streak, and he's actually from industrial Michigan, he's also fat, which I think is significant. No, I'm not being mean, I'm being serious. No one in the ruling class is fat. A lot of America is fat. Michael Moore, like, he seemed a little bit more real than, or potentially more real than a lot of the spokesmen for the left. Why is he going along with that? Like, what is this? Why are there no independent voices?
That's funny because he was, like I pointed out earlier in this conversation, he was the one who gave that big speech about why regular people are attracted to Donald Trump, and it's because they want to give an FU to the establishment that has left them behind, and the Democratic Party has certainly left workers behind. They crushed the railroad union strike, all of them, the Democrats, they all did that, and pretended they did it, pretend that they're somehow they're the party of the workers. It all ended with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was no friend of the working man. He got, you know, after Ronald Reagan, he called up Wall Street. They had the Democratic Leadership Council. You remember that? The DLC? Well. Do you remember who was on it? They had people from the Koch brothers sitting on their board. Him and, so there was, I mean, he gutted welfare. He increased the police state. He deregulated Wall Street. Which came to crash the economy and hurt black and brown people more than anybody. Within 10 years, he did that. He exploded the prison population, and he had a private plan with Newt Gingrich to privatize Social Security, but Monica Lewinsky screwed that plan up, if you read Listen Liberal. And so he did NAFTA, which cut the legs out from underneath the working unions for a generation. Those are things that Republicans couldn't do, which is why people like Glenn Ford and the Black Agenda Report has said that the Democrats are the greater evil. They're the more effective evil because they can get stuff done that Republicans couldn't. You know,
they've reached the Malcolm X position.
Yeah, So when George Bush the first wanted to do NAFTA, he couldn't get it passed because there was the certain Democrats in the South who wouldn't go along with it. Well, Bill Clinton came in and gave them cover And then they did it. They did NAFTA, right? Which screwed over war. So Barack Obama, he's dropped more bombs than George W. Bush. And nobody made a peep.
But how do you control critics who know better? That's what I don't get. And Michael Moore specifically, Michael Moore had his own franchise. He's not dependent. He doesn't have a cable contract. He doesn't. He was sort of outside. And here I'm not complimenting Michael Moore. I'm just noting, like, the guy had talent. He had his own income stream. He had some insight into what was actually going along the lines of what you just said. So how do you get Michael Moore to obey you and join forces with Larry Fink?
I think it's the same way they got Jon Stewart, right? So Jon Stewart went on Stephen Colbert, and he told the truth about where the COVID virus came from.
I remember.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And Stephen Colbert tried to stop him at every turn, to the point where Jon Stewart had to get up off the chair and walk directly towards the camera and finish what he was saying, so Stephen Colbert couldn't interrupt him. Do you remember that? It was
very well.
It was unbelievable. And then he got completely dismantled or completely ostracized by polite liberal establishment, and he spent the next year trying to get back into their good graces. That's what I think it is. It's that, we have that built into us through evolution. You want to be part of a group, and he was no longer part. He even talked about it, like, I didn't realize that there was a right-wing position on COVID, and there was a left wing, there was a conservative. I didn't realize that. Well, he friggin' got his mind right, and to make up for it, he then had to pin a medal on a Nazi at Disney World. A legit Nazi, which he's never been asked about or ever had to answer for. He then gave
Ukrainian Nazi.
Yeah. Then he gave a tongue bath to two of the biggest blood-soaked war criminals of my lifetime, Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton. He did that interview. That was just disgusting. And then he did a vaccine panel during COVID where he brought on 4 vaccine liars. Not one skeptic. He didn't bring on anybody with a counter-narrative to just lie about vaccines and COVID and not. So he was doing all these things to try to get back in good grade. That's my theory. That's why you're asking what happened to Michael Moore. I think you get ostracized, and he doesn't want to get ostracized. And then who knows? The money dries up for your next movie. Who knows what that? But definitely, it doesn't make any sense. That makes sense. That I'd love to ask him, but he'll never come on my show or answer.
I think it's a great explanation. Probably right. I think it's probably as simple as that. The desire not to be.
I know
shunned.
what it feels like to be shunned.
I know.
Right? People I've known all my life speak of me in the most despicable ways. And it's because I actually kept true to my values. I look forward to a day when the left actually criticizes and is skeptical of big pharma and is adversarial towards the government and the captured regulatory agencies and the liars inside government like Fauci and Collins and all those people. I look forward to those days when we stand up against the CIA again and don't believe the FBI and the intelligence communities, which has infiltrated every lefty organization and dismantled them. I look forward to those days when they come back. I never left them. They did. They became neocon right-wingers. I don't know if that's even the right term anymore to call it, but that's what the people who think they're liberal now are now. They're pro-war. They're anti-free speech. They're pro-censorship. They're anti-bodily autonomy, and now they're excusing a genocide. They're the exact opposite of what they think they are.
That's just I could not improve on that. Can I just take you back to something you said a moment ago about the 2016 election and Bernie Sanders? And Sanders was clearly, and it was also true in 2020, the Democratic candidate in the primaries with grassroots support. He with actual people behind him, right? And he had a message that was distinct from all other messages in the Democratic coalition.
And Russiagated him.
Okay. So I think, looking back, when historians untangle this, this mess that we've been living in for 9 years and trying to figure out what actually happened, like how did we wind up at war with Russia? A hot war with Russia, which we're in now.
Yeah.
I think they're going to trace it back to the leak of the DNC emails. I just have always felt that. What was that?
So, we know that. So it used to be that. Remember when George Bush said he met Putin and he looked into his soul and he's a good man?
Yes.
And that's because there was, we wanted to export our crony capitalism to Russia, which we did in a big way, and. There was economic interests in Russia. Well, then the war machine had economic interests, and we need a boogeyman again, right? And I remember when Biden was pulling out of Afghanistan, and there was a lot of people who consider themselves liberal that were giving him congratulations. Look, he's getting out. He's getting out. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What is he going to do with the money that we've been spending in Afghanistan? Well, has he said? Well, I'm going to wait till I hear, because I'm pretty sure they have another war in the chamber if they're going to let him end this one. And exactly they did. They had the Ukraine war in the chamber, which they had been preparing for at least a decade, if not longer. And again, that's the Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper, even Sean, they're never going to tell you that, oh, that's right, the CIA got in bed with right-wing Nazis in Ukraine to overthrow their democratically elected government. Why? For economic reasons. That's why. Why? Because the Ukraine wanted to, they got a better economic deal from Putin and Russia than they were getting from the European Union, and that cannot stand. And so we overthrew their democratically elected president. Then Zelensky's a puppet, right? And he ran on peace. That's the irony. So he ran on peace and ending war, and now he's banning newspapers and opposition parties and going into Christian churches, and you've seen it all. And killing American journalists, right?
And he's not elected. He's a dictator.
And he's
by definition.
Exactly. So they'll never tell you about the Minsk Accords and that they had peace agreements, and that, as Angela Merkel revealed, that they never, the Ukraine and the NATO never intended to abide by the peace. So what happened after we overthrew the government in Ukraine? In 2014 was the people, the Russian-speaking ethnics in the east part of Ukraine didn't want to go along with that coup government, and so the Ukrainian government, Nazis, started bombing them, right? They started shelling them, which is why we had to have peace agreements, Minsk 1 and 2 Accords, and Angela Merkel revealed that they never meant to go along with those. They just used that as a time to build up the Ukrainian military to get ready for a war with Russia that they were going to provoke, which everyone knows that they did provoke.
They certainly did provoke it. And
yes.
I don't think everyone knows that, but I'll just say it again. They provoked it using Kamala Harris at the Munich Security Conference.
Right, when she said that you were going to put them in, we're going to put Ukraine in NATO. That was the final straw. And there was, all Putin wanted was, hey, just don't do that. I can't have you putting nuclear weapons, and I can't have a NATO right on my border. And everybody could anyway. And so but the way it's told in the United States is that Putin is an evil dictator, and he just woke up one day and decided to invade Ukraine for kicks because he's just evil. And they don't have any. And then, of course, he blew up his own pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, the biggest, and which actually screws over Europe and Germany, right? Now their economies are all hurting because of that. And Putin's economy is growing faster than the United States.
Exactly.
And
I believe I was called a traitor for pointing that out, but it doesn't make it any less true. It's a fact.
But this is all, and this is so frustrating, this kind of propaganda. And because I have the time to look into this and I'm aware of it, and I can't keep my mouth shut about it, now, everybody calls me a right-winger. People say I'm turning Democrats into Republicans and stuff like that. I'm just like, no, I'm trying to wake up Democrats and Republicans to the uniparty that's been running things. And that's exactly what we're living in, And it's funny, I'm noting some kind of a pattern. Every war, there seems to be some kind of, in every coup we do, there seems to be some kind of natural resource that we actually are after in an economic gain. Just like, Lindsey Graham just said it, that there's $11 trillion in rare earth minerals under Ukraine. He just blurts it out like his boyfriend's name on Valentine's Day. And there it is. And I'm like, oh, nobody ever talked about this for the first 3-4 years of this war. All of a sudden, he's like, oh, it's all about $11 trillion in rare earth. Like, you son of a bitch. And they just say it. They just say it out loud, and there's no media there to hold him accountable because the media is now owned by billionaires like Jeff Bezos, and they don't hire journalists from blue-collar backgrounds. They hire journalists from Ivy League schools who are going to be class loyal. They don't have to tell them what to say.
Exactly. Who are going to be class loyal, boy.
We've told you before about Hallow. It is a great app that I am proud to say I use, my whole family uses. It's for daily prayer and Christian meditation, and it's transformative. So with everything happening in the world right now, it is essential to ground yourself. This is not some quack cure. This is the oldest and most reliable cure in history. It's prayer. Ground yourself in prayer and scripture every single day. That is a prerequisite for staying sane and healthy, and maybe for doing better eternally. So if you're busy on the road, headed to kids' sports, there's always time to pray and reflect alone or as a family. But it's hard to be organized about it. Building a foundation of prayer is going to be absolutely critical as we head into November, praying that God's will is done in this country and that peace and healing come to us here in the United States and around the world. Christianity obviously is under attack everywhere. That's not an accident. Why is Christianity, the most peaceful of all religions, under attack globally? Did you see the opening of the Paris Olympics? There's a reason. Because the battle is not temporal, it's taking place in the unseen world. It's a spiritual battle, obviously. So try Hallow. Get 3 months completely free at Hallow. That's hallow.com/Tucker. If there's ever a time to get spiritually in tune and ground yourself in prayer, it's now. Hallow will help personally and strongly and totally sincerely recommend it. Hallow.com/Tucker.
So I'm fixated on this question of the DNC emails winding up with WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. We were told that Russia did that. The FBI was never allowed in. The U.S. government never actually.
No,
CrowdStrike, right? Told us that, and we were just beat in the face with that line for the next 3 years, and it was on the basis of that supposed crime that Russia became our biggest enemy, and we wound up in a hot war with Russia. And my question to you is, do you think those emails were stolen by Russia and given to Julian Assange? He's denied that. Or do you think they were leaked to WikiLeaks by a disgruntled DNC employee who saw the DNC cheating in the primary on behalf of Hillary Clinton and against Bernie Sanders to shut down democracy within the party?
So that DNC email leak being blamed on Russia served two purposes, right? You get to tie Donald Trump to Russia,
right?
And then you get to demonize Russia,
Exactly.
Which they had a war in the chamber for, right? They knew this was coming, so it served both purposes. And do I think that? No, Russia. I had on Bill Binney, who at the time was the #1 code breaker for the NSA for decades. And of course, he told the truth, so the FBI tried to imprison him, but he's smarter than the FBI, which isn't that hard, and so he outwitted them.
Wait, the FBI tried to imprison Bill Binney?
Yeah. They tried to get him, but he outsmarted them. Right? He told the story on my show. I can't remember the details because it was in 2016.
But basically, he was just in one sentence. Binney, who's very familiar with how information moves digitally, made the case mathematically that it would be impossible to leak it from outside the building. You had to have someone downloading it from.
He said it had to be downloaded, and he said because there'd be a trail of electronic trail that you would see if that information got downloaded and went. So he said that had to be locally downloaded, right? And so then it comes up Seth Rich, right? So you always can tell when the establishment's up to some fuckery when they don't allow you to ask questions about something. Like you weren't allowed to ask questions about COVID, so you know something's up, right?
100%.
So,
but that's true in our personal lives too. If I refuse to talk about something, there's probably something there.
So I first experienced this when it came to Seth Rich, right? So I remember that there was a private investigator that was hired, I don't know, by the family or someone connected to the Seth Rich family, and he gave a press conference. And all I did was cover his press conference, and I asked logical questions like, hey, if this was a botched robbery, how come they didn't steal his watch or his wallet or anything? How come where's the videotape of this? There's cameras everywhere. Hey, where was he when the time he left the bar to the time he got to his house?
Yeah, buddy, I see you've been streaming, Christian. I see it, man.
I know. And I remember I was on a
didn't know you had 7. That's crazy.
Panel, and I said,
nice,
can
buddy.
anybody remember the last time there was an unsolved murder in Washington, D.C., and reporters weren't allowed to ask questions about it? And everybody's just like, well,
yeah, man. It took me a year and a half to become affiliate.
That's never happened before.
Right.
It's never happened since.
And I needed.
And so
he's charging you that much.
A hit piece put on me in the Washington Post because they called me a conspiracy theorist because I was asking logical questions about an unsolved murder.
How dare you!
In Washington, D.C. I was put in a hit piece in the Washington Post. And
I think it's average over the last 30 days, my man. It's not the end of the month. I think it's over the past 30 days.
Computer, Seth Rich's laptop. Then they said, okay, yeah, we have it, but we can't access it. Then they're like, okay, yeah, we accessed it, but we have a printout, but we can't share it. And then a judge ordered them to release their findings of the what's inside that computer, and they refused. The judge ordered them again. You have to do this, and they said, "Hey, no, they invoke some national security thing, and they said we're not going to release it."
I
for
think he's
65 years.
trying to
That's what
pay
they said.
some.
And I was like,
I think someone offered a custom alerts work for his channel. I think that's what
And
happened.
when the FBI
I don't know. I don't know what else. Did he give you the work? Did he give you?
So,
Did he do anything to your channel,
And
Christian?
of course, now I was right to ask all those questions. And so it certainly seems all the evidence points towards Seth Rich. It doesn't point towards Russia because now we know that Russia didn't. I knew that immediately. I knew that in 2016 that wasn't possible. And they knew that CrowdStrike was lying. In fact, and that it was the Hillary Clinton campaign and the intelligence community that concocted the Russiagate conspiracy theory, which is one of the dumbest, most easily debunked conspiracy theories of my life that was repeated ubiquitously in the press, right? Manufacturing consent. And so the Steele dossier, Hillary Clinton funded it, right? And we all know it was all made up. And she lied about that.
Christian, he's trying to scam you.
For lying about that.
You said he's your friend, but I mean, I think I'm not going to spend too much more time on this topic. I think, my friend, I'm sorry you're facing this issue, but
it doesn't get reported. I mean, it got reported.
I think he's trying to
but nobody made a big deal
scam you
so
because
that's what, if you ask
the only way Twitch pays you is if you pass a surplus of $50 made,
and they lied about everything.
like either through subs or bits.
I'm not a Democrat, have never been.
And like I think I have like 3
It's
subs,
hard to
which
assess
is
things as they
amazing.
happen. And
I
feel
love
like
my
an idiot
subs.
for not. My instincts
But, like,
align with
that's,
yours exactly. I thought
like,
there's lying here. I know
It takes me a few
but I'm
months
not exactly sure what they're lying about.
to get a payout of like $50. So I mean,
I remember that the Nation
my first
magazine
dude, it took me like a
was
year or
leftist
two before I got like
magazine
a
in the United
payout. I think. Well, there was
Victor
massive
Nebraska
donations from
ran a
Total
piece by
Bro
Bill
and Dick
Binney
Discount,
saying, "This is not
and
Russia.
and
Russia
all the
did not
subs
do
like Eric
this."
Director
you
and
look
Baron
back
Badcock and
8
everyone.
years, and the
Obvi.
idea that the Nation magazine would write a piece
Scotty
like that,
and
that's
everyone.
impossible to imagine now. They would never do that.
But
It's
like Twitch
every
is not
institution on
gonna.
the left got captured by this weird.
Sounds like he's scamming you,
neoliberal
dude.
Dishonesty, and how did that happen?
I would just say
Well,
I changed my mind.
Is that the... So Aaron Mate did a meticulous debunking of the...
Did he already do any work for you? Did he change anything?
He was allowed to be printed. I think it was in the Nation.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Boy, did the editor, I think Vanden Heuvel.
Katrina, yeah.
And she caught a lot of guff for just... It was the only time they printed anything counter to that narrative. And Aaron Mate ended up winning the I.F. Stone Independent Journalism Award for that work. And they said he meticulously debunked Russiagate. It didn't. Russiagate's a dumb conspiracy theory. If you want to find the debunking of it, there it is. It was given an award, the Izzy Award, right? But again, that doesn't make the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times. No, Rachel Maddow's never going to tell you that. She's just going to keep going on and Russiagating because to tell the truth about Russiagate gets you ostracized. And to lie about it gets you a $30 million contract, which is what Rachel Maddow got, which is $100,000 a day. That's how much Rachel Maddow gets paid.
I'm sorry, buddy.
About Ukraine, about COVID.
You should really read the requirements that they have. If you go on your creator dashboard, it has your affiliate goal requirements.
You know, you'd hope it's inadvertent. It's a mistake.
No.
I've made a lot of those. But the ones who lie on purpose, like NBC News or CBS or
And then it will show your average viewer count.
Like they are losing audience share as a result of their lying. Can they continue?
Yeah, I don't see any end to it.
It's very hard to become affiliate, man. It's extremely hard.
Check organizations. So I had like this,
Super upset, dude. It's so hard to become affiliate, man. Again, it took me a year and a half, and I asked for help for raids from people with like, well, Ninja Lifestyle had like 10,000 followers.
The Russian propaganda
at the
that you
time.
were targeted for assassination by
Gamer Girl had
Ukrainian,
like 1,000
I
followers at
went
the
back
time.
and I looked at my coverage and I said,
And like
the only thing
Dynamics
we can say for
rating
sure
me.
is that this guy
The
is being
raids,
detained
man.
for questioning. That's
That's the only way.
NBC did
I
that.
think I got like 3.0, 3.1 viewers.
That
Claimed
story's
affiliate,
true,
and
just
then
by the way.
I haven't.
I'm not going to talk
I don't think
about
I've
it now,
ever
but it's
even
just-
come close
it's
to
so interesting
average
they never
3.
called me. I was the target
is
of that
fine.
assassination attempt, so you'd think that someone
It's
would
hard. It's
ask me,
very
they never
hard.
did. Who was this employee?
And I'll raid you, man. When you're online, I'll raid you, brother.
And I can't think of her name.
I've done
but
it
I know
before,
she's
Albie.
been, as I looked into it, I'm like, oh, other people.
It's okay, man. But like in this day and age, like why affiliate? What do you? I mean,
that's what her job. She's a fact checker.
really,
She's
what do
a
you want?
librarian.
Affiliate
Now
for
she's a
emotes,
fact
maybe?
checker for NBC
Can you make
News.
follow emotes without being affiliate?
Something like that. She has like a Ukrainian sounding name. And then I just got contacted. Then the next week was a place called
Sorry, brother.
Logically Fallacy or Logically False or some kind of international fact-checking organization. And they're saying, hey, you're spreading misinformation about this. And it was a satirical piece I had done, one of them. And it was so funny. Do you guys know what satire is? Anyway, so I looked into who funds them, right? Because that's the first thing you want to do is look into who funds them.
Yeah.
And they were started off by a grant from
You use
MIT,
bits, brother.
which we all
No
know
worries.
is CIA infested.
I appreciate
and
it.
then they got Jeff Bezos, who's
I think it's
in
more
bed
for
with
the emotes.
CIA, and wants to keep his billions and billions of dollars of contracts.
But I mean, we
with the
shouldn't
CIA. He
pay
also
money
funded
for
them.
digital
And then
art.
their two big clients, the UK government and the United States government. You're fact checking on behalf of the war machine. That's what that is.
By the way, if you're a government fact checker, then you are by definition.
Brother, what we need
like
is a
liar.
union. We need
Lord
a
Hawk. You're like stooge.
streamer
yeah, Tokyo
union.
Rose. You're a liar. I mean, you're not only a
Baghdad.
liar, you're a collaborator.
Baghdad Bob.
Yeah, Baghdad Bob. Thank you.
That's what you are. That's what those people are. So what?
Because we're getting
what I
absolutely just
realized what was happening and
completely
it kind of
robbed.
scared me was that they're trying to get me. They're going to try and Russell brand me. They're going to try to get me deplatformed.
Oh, of course,
so
brother.
they can have all these articles.
Oh, no,
about
it's fucked.
Jimmy
It's
Dore
fucked,
spreading
man. The world's fucked.
misinformation, and they can point. And then YouTube will go, oh well, look at all this. We got to get rid of this guy. Look at all these fact checking organizations, which they did the same thing. So Facebook demonetized me because the big pharma funded fact checking organizations, which is funded by the Johnson and Johnson.
Streamer
said I was spreading misinformation
gets
about COVID.
streamer pays tax on
None of it was ever
50%.
misinformation. It was all information.
So
Again,
streamer, I pay
you don't get in trouble for telling the truth,
15%
which is what
tax
they did. They would write these. I mean.
on
20,000 word essays.
I think
about
the
how
total-
I lied about something, and it just came down to they didn't like my headline. They quibbled with my headline,
which is
That's
insane.
that's
So
a
a
quibble.
streamer
That's not
only
a
gets
fact check. Now, one
35%.
fact I got wrong, but then
of subs.
Facebook used that as, hey, they put a label on my
They get
story.
a third.
This is misinformation. You better not.
The
share
government
it. You
gets
better not even read it. You're gonna get in trouble. And
15%.
Zuckerberg
Bezos
has come
gets
out and
50%.
apologized. Yeah, I was pressured to do all this
And the streaming
censoring,
gets
and
one
they're still
third.
doing
Yeah,
it.
bro.
They're
No,
not
it's
stopping.
ridiculous,
Like,
dude.
I don't know why he even did that, but they're still doing it. They're still have those fake fact check organizations, and if
Yeah,
you look
bro.
into them, they're being funded by a billionaire, or they're with a political agenda, or by a big pharma or a corporation somewhere that has a political agenda.
That's
They're
why
not-
I always
anybody who
donate.
calls himself a fact checker is a liar.
If you're gonna support a
It's a
streaming, you
lie.
should always donate through PayPal.
Of course, the
And a
irony
credit
is
card.
It's always exactly the opposite of what they're telling you.
Yes.
But I mean, I
If
love
you-
the
if
subs.
you
I
get
love
your
it. I
money
love people
from the
not having to deal with my
government,
stupid ads
exactly.
and people supporting the
biggest
emotes and
liars are
everything.
always the
Sharing my
government.
emotes all
The
over.
second biggest liars is the corporate media,
course.
and third,
I
and
love
a
it.
distant third, are
And other people
randos
coming
on social media.
With like gifted subs, other people using my emotes and
That's so true. I think
the
anyone who
marketing
uses
of my
the
stream.
term misinformation
Marketing has been massive.
unironically is part of the problem. And
thank you, Toad.
Because that's not a real category.
Imagine these
There are only
guys
two
ask for money
categories, true
because you
or
film
false.
yourself to be right.
Inconvenient for the people in power is not a meaningful category to me. I don't give a shit whether
That's-
it's inconvenient
That's
for
what.
them.
Isn't that what?
Well, I mean,
what-
the
isn't
issue
one
is the
One of them,
fucking
disinformation. I
is
think is it might be true,
Jeff
but it's
Bezos and
inconvenient for the
Twitch.
establishment.
Or all of them.
Yeah.
It's true or false. Is it a lie?
they
or is it
declared
true?
they
It's
made like
that
$6
simple.
billion
And
last
it's-
year from ads
when
and
you
Twitch
start expanding the categories,
$6
it's
billion.
like the genders. I'm sorry. I just like
and
you get into
streamers.
fantasy, but it's fantasy
It's
concocted to protect the people in charge. I mean, so do you feel it feels
It's
to me
insane.
just being in New York last night like
we
things are
need a
changing,
union, man.
and
But who
Trump
wants to
is
do
at
that
the-
work? I'm a
the
lazy
apex of
guy.
the pyramid, but not sure how much it's about Trump. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I'm not really sure. But I've noticed a lot of people who seem to have decided, I'm just going to say what I think and I don't care anymore. Do you feel that?
But dude, I think it's all related. Like, it's also with Uber. Uber Eats.
What I will say is that when Bobby
Uber
Kennedy,
made like $5 billion in profit last year.
I think it was Glendale, Arizona.
Billion.
He got introduced, and he was up there talking about ending the billion
every driver is poor. Not poor, but I drove Uber, right? That's why I can just talk shit about it.
Up our water supply,
like they pay shit.
Food supply,
and
getting the corruption out of our
why?
captured agencies, the CDC, the FDA.
I think it's beyond greed. I think it's just to create this like class that like no, you can't socially have like there's no economy. There is an economy of entertainment and delivery. And it turns out those are the two largest economies going on in this 2024 post-COVID world. And they're still paying these people low fees in like a fake way to be like, oh no, you can't make a living being a streamer. Oh no, you can't make a living being a delivery person, when they made combined $10 billion in profit in 1 year through lies, just lies. And we get fucked. We're fucked. I think it's just to create like a social thing, like to people that actually work in the government and at stores, like, oh look, a streamer over there who's just making a few $100 a fucking year, can't make a living out of it. Oh, but look at Bezos making $5 billion off of advertising off Twitch. Like, we're getting fucked, man.
She doesn't mean she has more in common with workers. She doesn't mean she has more in common with regular people or students, and she means she has more in common with neocon Republicans. She doesn't mean that they share a common enemy. They are the common enemy. And so that's what I'll say about that. And I see,
30?
I have a
oh
red
wow,
line.
insane.
I wish Donald Trump.
Instacart.
I was
20 an hour. That's really good, brother. Instacart. I'll do that. 20 an hour. I was making net 13 an hour doing Uber Eats, driving 1,000 kilometers a week.
The thing is that
I think I made net $450 for like 60 hours, 1,000 kilometers.
So that gives me hope. I'm in a weird way. They're trying to kill him, so that's got to mean something. Right?
2,000 a month.
Definitely agree with that.
And they're not
4,000 kilometers driven.
They're not trying to kill Joe Biden, and so there's got to be something.
The establishment has a very
240 hours in a car.
And they've done nothing to help our society, and I mean
for
that.
poverty, while the
one
company
thing
makes
they're really
$5
good at is
billion.
sniffing out who means it,
Isn't that
who's the
insane?
threat. Their threat assessment
It's
is
fucking criminal, bro.
They know. Like, they look at AOC, who's like, power to the people, power to the workers, and they're like, oh yeah, she's one of us. Like, they know that's a lie. They
So I'm a
know she
neat.
doesn't mean it. And they look at someone like Tulsi.
I'm big time neat.
Like, liberal chick from Hawaii.
Fuck this world.
And they look at her and they're like, no, actually, you can't be in our party. Like, they could just feel it. You know what I mean? And the fact they want... It almost doesn't matter what you say. They're like animals. And I mean this as a compliment. They detect the aroma. Like, they know who's a threat. And I agree with you. Trying to kill Trump is like... It establishes bona fides in my mind.
Instacart.
The
That's what I wanted to write down.
Tulsi and
oh yeah.
Forget what happened. She was a darling of the
$20, bro. That's so much better than what Uber was paying, though, bro.
And then she decided to support.
Uber pays unsustainable.
She decided to support Bernie Sanders.
I don't know how.
Right, which made her
like, Uber is a completely unsustainable model.
Half the party supported Bernie. Half the
like, it's
Democratic
ridiculous.
primary voters supported Bernie. Half supported Hillary Clinton. So that half the party hated her, right? And then she went on to tell the truth about the Syrian war.
Yes.
And to tell the truth about the rest of our
2030 was good, but 20 is hard. Yeah, I bet.
Interest. And she lost the red. Then she ran against Joe Biden, and she ran against
$30. Wow, good job, Christian.
Turned on her too. And,
what did you do it on?
That's why
I won't even do Uber or DoorDash.
I just try to remind people. And now I disagree with Tulsi's view on a lot of things. Israel's the big one. But I don't forget why people, again, just like with you, She got in trouble because she told the truth about Syria, because she told the truth about Ukraine, because she told the truth about the Democratic Party cheating Bernie Sanders and the corporate control of their party. That was, again, you don't get in trouble for lying. She got in trouble for telling
What did
the
you
truth.
use? Do you drive?
He's absolutely right. And they knew. They could smell it on
Do you
the
drive a
way.
car?
She got back from that trip to see Assad, and I was so out of it. I was like, what's wrong with that?
She's on the Foreign Relations Committee.
Well, exactly. And she wasn't, I never understood why we were against Assad in the first place. I never had strong feelings about Assad. He protected the Christians in Syria. I don't know. That seemed like a good reason to at least be neutral. No, whatever. I wasn't that interested in the topic. I'm American, right? So it's not my world. I'm not living in the Levant in my head. But when she did that, I remember, they were just like, no, they hated her more than they hated any Republican. I was really struck by that.
So that,
Christian, are you lying?
That the reason why the Syrian war happened was because they wanted to put a pipeline from, was it Qatar or Saudi Arabia, right through Syria. And of course, Syria was aligned with Russia, and they didn't want it. And so they wanted to get rid of Assad so they could do that. And
Sure you're not.
the CIA was backing,
Of course you're not.
ISIS and Al Qaeda,
Actually,
literally funding them, right?
Because someone would drive around in their own car doing Uber pickups
and it was all
for
planned
someone
without
else to
question
make
or
someone else
wrong.
money.
If
Yeah.
you're funding
Yeah, because that's
ISIS and
real.
Al-Qaeda,
Yes.
That's
you're
totally
not
real.
on our side.
No.
And yet our government did that with our money. And Tulsi, if I'm recalling this correctly, sponsored a piece of legislation that basically said we're not allowed to use U.S. tax dollars to fund ISIS.
Is that?
They were like, shut up, extremist!
That's right. Yeah, right winger.
So Canadian Agent and I, we actually do deliveries, right? And we know what's
In Syria,
complete
that
bullshit
the
and what's
Pentagon
not.
would be funding one terrorist organization, and the CIA would be funding another terrorist organization, and then they would fight each other inside Syria. And how do I know that? Because it got printed in the LA Times. That's how obvious
yeah.
it was.
No.
But again, it's on page 37. It's not on page 1. It's not the lead story of the news. In fact, it never makes the TV news. And all they do is show you pictures of them
Sign up
cutting
with a
guys' head
bike.
off with a butcher's kitchen knife. You remember when that was
Probably
a big thing?
just get your
On
friends
cable, I
drive
remember
everything.
watching
It's
Chris
just
Matthews,
nice.
and they would show
So we're going to
ISIS
see
guy
you doing
cutting someone's
tomorrow
head
map with a
off
bike
with
symbol.
a kitchen knife, and Chris Matthews like, the president's got to do something. He's got to do something. That's exactly how propaganda works.
It's
And
so
they're
insane,
barbarians.
how much,
And my
how
response was,
obvious of a
why don't they blow
lie
their heads off with a nice Christian
like
bomb
that
made
is.
by
It's
Christians
just so
in a
insane.
Christian bomb factory, because that's what Jesus would do.
We did an interview
I think everything
with
is just a
woman
lie.
called Casey Means. She's a Stanford
I think it's just
educated
all
surgeon
goddamn fake.
and really one of the most remarkable people I have ever met. In the interview, she explained how
But
the
it's the
food
internet.
that we eat,
What do
produced
you
by
expect, right?
huge food companies, Big Food, in conjunction with pharma, is destroying our health, making this a weak and sick country. The levels of chronic disease are beyond belief. What Casey Means, who we've not stopped thinking about ever since, is the co-founder of a healthcare technology company called Levels, and we are proud to announce today that we are partnering with Levels, and by proud, I mean sincerely proud. Levels is a really interesting company and a great product. It gives you insight into what's going on inside your body, your
It's
metabolic
the
health. It helps
internet.
you understand how the food that you're eating, the things that you're doing every single day are affecting your body in real time. You put stuff in your mouth, speaking for myself anyway, and you don't think about it. You have no idea what you're putting in your mouth, and you have no idea what it's doing to your body. But over time, you feel weak and tired and spacey, and over an even longer period of time, you can get really sick. So it's worth knowing what the food you eat is doing to you. The Levels app works with something called a continuous glucose.
I wouldn't,
CGM.
yeah, I
Get one
wouldn't
as part of the plan, or you can bring your own. It doesn't matter.
think too hard
Bottom
about
line is, big tech, big
what-
pharma, and
what
big
is said.
food combine
The Canadian
together
agent.
to form an
I
incredible
wouldn't-
leveling
I wouldn't
force,
put your best brain
pumping
cells
you
at
full
that
of garbage,
task.
unhealthy food with artificial sugars, and hurting you and hurting the entire country. So with Levels, you'll be able to see immediately what all this is doing to you. You get access to real-time personalized data, and that's a critical step to changing your behavior. Those of us who like Oreos can tell you firsthand. This isn't talking to your doctor at an annual physical, looking backwards about
It's
things
just
you
too
did
much,
in the
man.
past. This is up to the second information on how your body is responding
What
to
the-
different
how did
foods
it
and
dodge
activities,
him? What?
the things that give you stress, your sleep, etc., etc.
It's too much, brother.
It's easy to use. gives you powerful, personalized health data, and then you can make much better choices about how you feel. And over time, it'll have a huge effect. Right now, you can get an additional 2 free months when you go to levels.link/Tucker. That's levels.link/Tucker.
Gotta go now.
This is the beginning of what we hope will be a long and happy partnership with Levels
Okay.
and Dr. Casey Means.
But can I just ask you, I don't want to get too far afield, but since you've been watching this stuff for so long, whatever happened to Chris Matthews? He was like a dutiful soldier for the
He got me
Democratic
too.
Party. But why? I mean, I worked in television my whole life, so I know for a fact that a lot of people could have been Me Too'd, but it was Chris Matthews, and they just crushed
No
him.
need to lie around here. No need to lie.
I found a video. It's a good question. I found a
In fact,
video
don't.
of him on, I
It's
think,
better not to
election night,
lie always.
some
I'm not saying
election
I'm
night,
Mr.
and
Perfect, but
Rachel
still
Maddow's
better not.
sitting there saying,
Better not
you
to
know,
lie around here. You
Trump's
know.
victory, the Republican victory is all about
That's it.
racism and hatred and racism.
But like it's
And he was
impossible.
like, nah, you know, if you go through Wisconsin and you see that, you know, the diners closed and there's this thing and the people and the, and he made an economic case for what was happening, and I was like, that's what happened. That's what happened.
Amazing.
Because he actually slipped up and told the truth once, right? Just like Jon Stewart when he slipped up and told the truth about.
I mean, it's like I'm honored that you feel like you need the necessity to lie
They
to
had to make an example out of him.
want to
'cause that's what that was.
socialize and fit in, but you don't have to. You
I'm
don't
so
have to
glad I
lie.
asked
You
that
don't have to lie
question.
here.
So there's a zero tolerance policy for certain truths. I mean,
Yes.
it's absolute zero tolerance. Like you can spend 40 years if you're Chris Matthews.
I'm
carrying
unemployed,
water
brother.
For a bunch of dumb politicians, pretty reliably, and then you say one thing about economics that's true, and you're done.
Yeah. And or look at Mehdi Hassan. He thought he was insulated because he lied about the Syrian war, he lied about the Ukraine war, he lied about COVID, he lied about Russiagate. He did all that for the establishment, so he thought that had bought him some a little insulation to tell a little truth about Palestine.
What
And
the fuck?
No, you're fired. And that was that. You know what I'm talking about.
If I do, yeah.
And that was, he's like, no, dummy. You don't get to tell even a little bit of truth, especially one that's consequential.
So do you think, I mean, it just looks like if you look at the Rogan numbers, for example, or your numbers, for example, it does feel like the era of those news organizations, which I will never
Thanks,
stop
brother.
being angry at because I worked at them. But it
I
does feel like their era.
they gave me more. So
Well,
they gave me
funny
more
is that
quizzes.
my
I gotta do more
numbers keep going up
quizzes.
on,
I think they gave me a second chance
YouTube has, I'm considered borderline content.
because I mean
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. And
the guy was
so
an ass.
They,
But I didn't know, like, it's fine. I think they gave me a second chance because I have more quizzes to take and more stuff, more tasks to do. And I'm just going to spend longer on the tasks, which is fine.
Now they've gotten me
I'm just going to, I might just spend the whole 50 minutes. Yeah, brother, I might just, because I read a couple things. I read that
what's going on?
it matters about
Is there
your
anything
time
that
and your
I'm
speed and your
making?
efficiency.
Is there anything I can do to
But I
get
think
this
what
to
matters
off
most
this
is
algorithm
quality and
that I've been put
complexity,
on out? And
which
it
I
just
had no idea
got
before.
way worse
So, which
during
is fine. I
election
can fucking
season.
make up a bunch of
And the
bullshit.
response was, well, it's
Art,
the
like
election
artificial
season.
math, right?
And
Get
so,
paid
everybody's
really
numbers
well.
in this space are down. I'm like, that's like saying I should be selling.
Some of the criticism was
that's like
really
saying I should
dumb.
be selling less,
Like, just
less,
really dumb.
Less toys during Christmas season. I
Exactly.
mean, this is my numbers should be going through
Less
the
ice
roof.
cream.
But
and
yeah,
others.
thanks, bro.
I
Let's
mean, I
actually
understand. It's YouTube got the hell scared out of them in 2017 because we are a threat. Like, now you're independent, I'm independent. We are a threat to the New York Times, to MSNBC. We do get higher ratings, and especially Joe Rogan. And that's why they come at him so hard, is because we're a threat to their business model. So they have to discredit us.
that?
And the way they do it is
GetImage.ai.
scare advertisers away from shows like
Wow,
ours,
insane.
right? That's the. I mean, there's a story that just came out. That's how they wanted.
So you
to,
might know more
the
about
Labour
this than
Party
me.
in the UK had a plan to kill.
So it
Elon
was
Musk's
remote
Twitter by
tasks,
scaring
right?
Advertisers away, right?
And
so that's
Outlier
exactly
AI
what they
bought
did. It was
them.
called the Adpocalypse. It happened on YouTube in 2017, and it's been, a tough slog ever since. But we still break through. People still are hungry for. They're just
Yeah.
hungry for honesty, right?
It took
even
like
I
6
say,
months
I
to
was
get added to
half
that
my
project,
audience
and I don't know
doesn't
what
share
the
a
future
lot of my
lies
politics,
holds, but
they appreciate that I'm not lying to them, and that I don't call them racists, or
Could be
I don't
cool.
hate them. I respect
I'll
them,
take it
and I
seriously.
tell
I'll
them
take it
to
more
share,
seriously now.
We all want the same things, but we just have different.
Now that I know
ways
it's
of
real, I'll
doing
take it more
I-
seriously. But come on, my first attempt was pretty good.
I actually do agree with.
Like,
a
I
lot
took
of
it
things,
seriously,
not all,
too.
of course, but I think
I took
you're,
my first attempts really
sincere
well. There wasn't a fucking
and
spelling
serious
mistake. It was
and
all
brave,
fucking
And those are the three qualities that I
stump the
don't look
model,
for in my
whatever.
friends. and in people I trust in you.
Tasks.
Why wouldn't I? Sincere.
Yeah, you
not
got it.
lying
Thanks,
to me.
brother.
Maybe wrong, but not lying. Serious, like trying to honestly, like what are the
I don't
big
think I
issues? What
deserve
actually
fucking
matters?
1
I think that's
star.
important.
That guy was fucking wilding, man. 1
And brave,
star?
not gonna get pushed
Come on.
around. Like I don't know. I don't think it's that hard. Right?
I mean, they've certainly tried to push me around. You know,
I had better grammar
when I
than the
spoke at
reviewer.
UN Security Council, I was invited to speak on the anniversary of the Nord Stream pipeline bombing. And so
That's the funniest act of industrial terrorism in history because Putin did it. Putin is so evil that he blew up his own pipeline.
He's not an evil genius. He's an evil moron, I guess. He blew up his #1 economic stream. But
I'm starting to think
so when I did, and I
that the
spoke in
reviews
blunt
might
language to
come
the Security
from
Council about,
more
if
advanced
you think Russia did
users
this, you're either
that are
a paid liar or a
forced
dupe.
to
And,
do a review as an assignment.
on my way. So I did
And
that
the
via
review
Zoom 'cause I
becomes
was in Europe
my
at the time, and on
fucking
my way
review.
home on the plane.
You know what I mean? Because
Computer and my
like
iCloud account
the
got hacked.
specificity at
It
which
was
this
from
person replied
Pegasus,
was
right?
just
Now,
so
Pegasus
insane.
was invented by the Mossad, and it's very expensive.
Well, my
if you want to
project,
get it, costs
I
millions of
uploaded my
dollars,
resume,
and they
which
can do it.
has my
Anyway, I remember when I got off
university
the plane, I called
education
my IT guy who used to be a security specialist
that I've
for the
invested
military. And I told him
into.
what happened, and he was like, "Oh my God, Jimmy!" He goes, "Even I couldn't do that." He said, "This wasn't a
So
person, this
I
was a state actor."
don't think you need education.
And I said, "Well, maybe I shouldn't have given that speech at the Security Council."
I don't
And
know,
he
man.
laughed, and I go, "No, I just did that."
I have
He
no
goes,
idea.
"Oh my God, that's what this is."
Yeah, of course.
And so that was, and then they also put my name on that list of that kill list, Ukraine.
Yeah, I have like a
That kill list was
biology,
Been there.
environmental
we're on.
biology,
And,
education
so these are
degree.
and so now they have everything. So if
Degrees.
they want to turn it on me, they've got everything that was ever on my hard drive, everything's on my
So it was added
computer,
like
my
a
phone,
conservation
on my iCloud
biology,
account. So if
chemistry.
they want to compromise me, they got a lot of stuff.
So the
They got a
prompts,
lot of stuff.
the
And so-
prompt was
and if
conservation biology and
of course they'll plant
genomics.
it on there, right?
That's why I said,
if it's not, they'll
please
they'll make it-
provide
they'll make me look
the.
however they want to make me
What
look.
did I ask for? The
Yeah, I mean,
phylogenetic
I
distance
don't have a computer, and I try and stay off the
between
internet for that exact reason. And I just wanna
reptiles
say,
and
I envy you so
out
much.
loud many times
amphibians?
that I think kitty porn is wrong, and I think not in pornography in general. And
So
I
no,
just
man.
wanna
I
say,
mean, just put you
see
can put
these
your resume
people,
up.
without even naming names. But
I have a
one of them
LinkedIn
I know
profile,
personally,
so I
it's
mean
like all of a
maybe they.
sudden,
I think
you're into kitty
they-
porn. Okay.
based on the response,
Yeah.
they probably
yeah.
definitely
No, I
read
mean,
my
for sure,
resume
for sure. I mean,
and
I've seen it. I know.
verified.
Having been the target
the
of
resume
stuff
to
and
my
people
LinkedIn
whine
account.
about it, I never want to seem like I'm whining. I have a great life, and I feel
Because I put my
privileged to have
LinkedIn
the job that I do. But
account on my
there's
resume,
very heavy
the
stuff
link.
going on. There's no
Dude,
doubt
I just always wanted to be a comedian. Honest to God, Tucker, I just wanted to be a comedian and be able to sell tickets and tour and have people like me because I was
But
funny.
there's definitely a
that's all I
biologist
ever
that
wanted.
replied.
And somehow, well, when I did my special in 2008, it was called Citizen Jimmy on Comedy Central, and that got some attention, and so I just got.
But
it was
dude,
the
there's,
Iraq
like,
War that
every
made
type
me
of
get interested. Like I couldn't believe
project.
how bad the cable news.
Just put your
was
resume,
reporting
whatever you have
stuff.
experience
I just
in.
started talking about it in my act,
Or
and,
skills
and
in.
a lot of people reacted positively to it. And when I got offered my own public radio show in Los Angeles on KPFK, and I started just doing what I do now, and I realized that I could do it.
And then you
way
connect your
better
PayPal.
than
That's how you get paid.
anybody in the
Connect your
corporate news,
PayPal
because
account.
I don't have that mind control that they. First of all, they pre-select those
Pretty
people, 'cause
sweet.
like I said, they come
In
from
theory,
Ivy League.
I haven't
There's
gotten
two
paid
types of
yet.
people who go to journalism school: dupes and bad journalists.
Don't know if it's
And
Canadian American. I think it's
everyone-
Canadian.
And they all come from the same class.
I've never hired one.
And
Could be wrong.
In 30
Might be
years
American.
of being in more than 30 years being in this business, I've never hired a single person.
Journalism school.
It's a trade, not a profession. It's by the way the most straightforward trade there is.
Yes. And they want you back, make you like, you're not a professional. I've had people, say that to me. You're not a journalist. I'm like, all a journalist is as it was described to me, is you stick your head and you take a look down the street and you report back what you saw.
That's exactly right.
That's all journalism is.
And you do it, with a high level of honesty and a dollop of courage, but it's just not hard. If you're really smart, you can fix air conditioners. If you're less smart, you can do journalism. I mean, that's
Cool, man.
real.
That's such a great way to put it. That's really funny.
Well, it's true. It's so. But what? Okay, so
I was-
I'm interested, and I think you might know the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
If Trump wins in a week, a little over a week.
Precisely.
What? I don't see how they're going to let him win.
And I did. My prompt stumped it. It was the most that's the reason. That's another thing. That's what really pissed me off, because it was the most parsimonious way of finding the answer to stump the model.
Why wouldn't they be willing to
a certain value. Bro. Like, I was like,
I think maybe,
I'm really upset by the reviewer, man.
Level of popular support that's just hard to hide.
Because if you're actually going to build on the model, the easiest way to do so would be to do it piece by piece, question by question, the most parsimonious answers, right? That would be the best way to do it.
He wins all 7 battles.
Because then you just like add that piece to it, but no. You want to be a convoluted asshole.
That are kind of hard to.
And I can do that. That's fine. I can do that. Just tell me to do that. To be that. I can do that. It's fine.
How does the Democratic Party respond? Or the establishment respond?
I bet they just double down on everything that they.
Really?
Yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah. They lost to him the first time, and I'm like, well, this is gonna force them to change. It didn't. Yeah. They invented Russiagate.
Yeah. It's like. And they didn't even like question the fact the model got it wrong. They never said it got it wrong.
How did this happen? How was I part of this disaster? What bad
they never like addressed that issue. That
was it my fault?
That I was right there.
To do that. That's what it is to
but
be
whatever.
An adult,
They're
right?
just being assholes.
You can't always blame other people for your problems.
It's amazing.
Just a fucking another gatekeeper, man.
That's what COVID taught me. That's what Russiagate taught me. That's what every January 6th, Syria.
Prompt scripts.
Ukraine,
Yeah, I was thinking using AI to create prompt scripts.
They don't think they are. That's the problem. They think.
But you can stump it pretty easily.
Something to tell you about it, but I can't remember.
Even just one sentence, but they don't want one sentence.
I thought that was going to make them change it. They just got way worse. They got chaos. And I mean, why do you think there's an open border? There's many reasons. One is we can't meet our recruiting goals for the military.
Exactly.
And
thank you for saying that. That's what this is.
That's a big part of what this is. And I'm not making that up. Dick Durbin said it on this Senate floor into a camera. That's what this is, that we got to have these immigrants so we can meet our recruiting
Let's
goals.
give them guns. Yeah, they're not going to be a tool of the state against the population. And then the Pentagon makes it legal for the military to murder American citizens? Are you joking?
Yep. And another part is, of course...
And no one says anything about it.
As soon as unions start to get some power, right, they open the border and flood the country with immigrants and so now we have workers, desperate poor workers. Now their ire is turned towards even more desperate people, right? So we put sanctions on Venezuela and to try to overthrow their government, because it turns out there's more oil underneath Venezuela than there is Saudi Arabia. And so all of a sudden we got to bring their people some democracy.
No.
And why don't we let Venezuela work it out? Because we don't want to let them work it out. We want to install a puppet so we could get their natural resources. So we put sanctions on, and the whole point of sanctions is to make the people who live there miserable. So they get so miserable, and the idea is they'll rise up and overthrow their leader, and then we can install a puppet. It's never worked.
Not one time.
Not one time has it worked. They're trying to do it to Iran. Not going to work.
Russia.
Russia. It's not working. And so those people then do become miserable, and then they flood our own country as immigrants, and they fly some of them in on jets, and same thing with Haiti. We've been wrecking their economy, and Hillary Clinton made sure they didn't get a minimum wage, right? And it's unbelievable what we've done. We've stolen their natural resources. We've stolen their gold. We've occupied their country. Right now, Joe Biden is bribing the corrupt government of Kenya to send
that's amazing, man.
Peacekeepers over to Haiti, because the people
truly amazing
in Haiti.
It's pretty insane how precise you have to be with that grenade. I was watching a stream. You have to get it inside the friggin' turret box.
So what my point is, do people come to America and the mistake is to turn your ire towards the immigrant, which is what the establishment wants.
He's so good, man.
I would do exactly. If I was in Venezuela, I'd get the hell out of there and come here and try to get a job. If I was in Haiti,
he's so
I'd
fast at learning.
Try to come here and get a job, especially if I'm being encouraged to, which they are. Paid to do it. Yeah. So
Oh, wow.
The key is make sure don't lose your focus, come together and keep your eye on the establishment that's creating those desperate people and opening the border and creating chaos. And let's remember, chaos always favors the establishment. And so it makes you, this isn't different, right? Mao did a very similar thing.
Wild.
That he split, he did divide and conquer.
The guy says he was, chaos always favors the establishment.
Yes.
Chaos always.
And if you feel like you're living in a chaotic country, it's because it's intentional.
It's
and it's
so
just
true.
You know,
Sorry, I interrupt you. I just want that to hang in the air for a second because I think that's really wise and it's worth remembering. 10 days out.
Seems really troll level getting boosted all the time. Runway 00.
Tour last month, one of the funnest things we've ever done. Coast to coast, 16 different cities. Speaking,
oh wow, insane.
Well, next week our grand finale, Halloween.
Yeah, waiting for, or pushing B before the explosion happens.
Special guest that night, days before
Completely
the presidential election, Donald
interesting.
Trump. All proceeds donated to hurricane relief. We're proud to do it. Hope to see you there.
So what? I'm sorry, I interrupt. Tell me what Mao did. How did he use chaos?
Well, he split the people up into the good people and the bad people.
Right.
And the good people were the people who did what they were supposed to, right? And if everybody just did what they were supposed to, we'd have this utopia. But we can't have it because the bad people won't do it.
Can you
right?
imagine?
Well, just like with
No,
COVID,
I'm not gonna say it.
right? Now, Rob Schneider makes this point, right, in his book, which is fantastic, that like during COVID, it was like we could get out of this pandemic if those bad people would just take a vaccine, which was always a lie. You could never vaccinate your way out of this pandemic. You could never get rid of the coronavirus, and they couldn't. But that was a lie. But that kept them, and then so that's how it kept people divided and conquered, and that's what it. So that's what's going on, right? Why can Gavin Newsom all of a sudden clean up homelessness in San Francisco when he's having the president of China visit, but he can't do it before and he certainly can't do it after. That's all. I mean, of course, so chaos favors the estate. They want it that way. They want people living under bridges. They want you being accosted by meth heads when you're going to the 7-Eleven. They want you begging for authority. They want you to be willing to give up freedoms, just like people were during COVID. Arnold Schwarzenegger, screw your freedom. Remember that? Famously, he said,
Get out of our country.
Screw your freedom.
Yeah, I agree.
What? Why would I want to screw my freedom? Because that's exactly what Mao did. You split everybody up.
The Austrian rose to the surface in Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, ha. And so that's what this is. And they want us not come in. It's true. Like me and you coming together on Syria, on Ukraine, on COVID. This is a threat to the establishment. They have to divide and conquer. They can't let that happen. One time, I remember I think it was during the Black Lives Matter riots. There was a guy I saw at the Michigan Capitol, and he was a Boogaloo Boy. Now, the Boogaloo Boy they were a response to the Proud Boys, right? So they didn't want to be associated with them. They were anti-war. They were anti-police brutality. They provided security for Black Lives Matter protesters. And he went to the Capitol, gave a speech. We have more in common than separates us. We are brothers. We have common interests. And he was there with someone from an LGBTQ organization. He was there with a Black Lives Matter person and a Boogaloo Boy. So I interviewed that Boogaloo Boy. That was the worst thing I could have ever done. They came at me like I had never been come after. I had written articles about me. Jimmy Dore is a leader of the dirtbag left, and he's in bed with alt-right and these right-wingers and Nazis and. Yeah, and I was like, no. I just interviewed a guy who, by the way, the dirty secret is those guys like those Boogaloo Boys used to be Democratic voters 25
Make that
years
money.
ago, and they're not anymore, and they don't want you to ever talk about why they're not anymore because their backs have been the Democratic Party turned their back on them, right? And so I brought that guy on, and I got murdered on social media, corporate news pieces, hit jobs, people. It was videos made about me to the end of the day. And all I did was, I remember I tweeted out, I go, hey, I just interviewed a Boogaloo Boy. We agree on war. We agree on LGBTQ. We agree on Black Lives. We agree on all that. I go, isn't that weird? And I got ratioed. I got, I trended for probably a week. They could not, the establishment cannot have that. They cannot have you coming together. And that's the message. That's my message is, no, you're not my enemy. You're my neighbor. And you are hurting just like I am. We're under the same, just like during COVID is what I tell people during my show. The establishment did a controlled demolition of our economy, which flattened everybody except a handful of millionaires and billionaires. And they want me to be angry and hate my neighbor for the pain I'm feeling because of that, because they wouldn't take a vaccine that didn't work the way they said it did in the first place. Well, I'm not going to hate my neighbor. I'm going to join with my neighbor because we share a common enemy. And that's the only way to get this out of this hellhole and this death spiral that our country's on right now. We're in the end stage republic, and people don't realize it. They think Trump's the problem. Then Trump is a problem. People willing to vote for Trump is a system of a uniparty problem that has been squashing workers for the last 50 years. I've had people say to me, Jimmy, January 6th undermined our democracy. And I'm like, you're adorable because we don't live in a democracy. We live in a flat out oligarchy, which was proven by a Princeton study over 10 years ago. Your democracy was stolen by corporations 50 years ago. When are you going to get pissed off about that?
Is it that people don't want to see how deep the rot is, how big the problem is? It's just too much for them to metabolize? Why?
It's hard for them to believe that Barack Obama was a problem. Like, oh, wait a minute. I've had people, he's the best president of my lifetime. No, he was the best speaker. He made you feel good. He was, again, there's a reason why he got more money from Wall Street than John McCain. It was a reason why he instituted a right-wing healthcare plan. There's a reason why he let him play it out at DAPL. There's a reason why he dropped more bombs than George Bush. It was a reason why he destroyed Libya. He destroyed Libya, and he's like, oh, that was a mistake, And they're gonna prosecute people who, a lot of them peacefully protested on January 6th. But Dick Cheney, they go, oh, it's about the rule of law. Why does Dick Cheney and George Bush still walk the earth? Barack Obama was supposed to prosecute them. Because they ordered a worldwide torture program, right? And Barack Obama's constitution required to prosecute them, and he didn't. And the public reason he gave was because he said all those torture crimes happened in the past, and Barack Obama was looking towards the future. And well, when I heard that, I felt a lot better because all the crimes I've committed, they're in the past too. I'm glad we're not prosecuting past crimes. I bet those people in prison are pissed off they committed their crimes in the future.
But that we're having this conversation, and I'm not just saying this to inject a note of optimism, but because I think I believe it. The fact that we're having this conversation suggests that the level of consciousness is very different from what it was.
I think COVID woke people up.
Exactly. So how can you...
What happened to monkeypox? What happened to bird flu? Was those test balloons? Do you think people go along with it? And then people did, and they're like, all right, get rid of it.
No, but that's the thing. I don't think people are going to go along. I mean, if they come back, in 8 days or whenever it is on November 6th and say, Kamala Harris is a historic first. She's just incredibly popular, got more votes than Barack Obama. I'm just going to say, no, that didn't happen. Like, you're lying, and I'm sick of having to go along being bullied into repeating your lies. And I think a lot of people are in that frame of mind also. Do you?
Well, you see the media is getting more panicked, and they're getting more
They
desperate.
should be panicked.
Yeah, you see what's going on. You saw
they're Quislings. They're collaborators with the totalitarian regime, and they should be panicked.
100%, right? And you see the things they want to focus on instead of what people want them to focus on. You see when MSNBC will go and they'll interview some regular voters in like Wisconsin or Michigan, and they'll bring up January 6th, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't affect my life.
Who cares?
Who cares about that? Do you know who does care about that? You, the liberals, the media, and then the people who watch that media are taught that they're supposed to care, because we almost lost our democracy, which again, I already pointed out, you don't live in a democracy, you're a chump.
It was unarmed. You can't have an unarmed insurrection. These were old ladies deep in debt with diabetes who believed in the Constitution. You could say they were wrong to think the election was stolen. Okay, that's a real debate. Happy to have that debate, but they believe that. They were not sinister.
That was an FBI, yes, that was just a regular riot that was allowed to happen and encouraged to happen by the FBI plants in the crowd.
Exactly.
And how do I know that? Well, because Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, was under congressional testimony, and he was asked, did you have FBI assets dressed up as MAGA supporters inside the Capitol before the riot started? And he said, I can't answer that question, which means yes.
Yes.
The answer should be no, which is what the congressman said. The answer should be no.
Well, the answer should be we're not going to continue to fund your agency if you don't answer the question. And we're certainly not going to build you a brand new building, which they did.
Yeah.
Which the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, signed off on, to his eternal shame. One of the many things for which he should be ashamed. Anyway, but but again, we're kind of proving the point that underlies my question, which is everybody kind of knows what's up now. So how can you continue?
I hope so. I just hope so, because we travel in different circles, right? And, I'm in liberal Hollywood, and you're other places.
Really? So when
People are still, they're hypnotized. They're in a trance.
even now?
Yeah, look at the media. I mean, they think the media is real. They think it's the news. Yes. In Hollywood, yes. Yes, in Los Angeles.
So what happens when you're at a dinner party and you start dropping stuff like this?
It's a dinner party.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah.
You're eating sushi alone in Ventura Boulevard?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes. I mean, I hang out with other heretics,
Really?
Yeah.
You do? How could you still be hypnotized after all of, I get, okay, this virus shows up from China. You think it's, got a 50% death rate or whatever. People are afraid. I understand. But, 4 years later, really? You still think that's real?
You know what the real death rate was? It was 0.27%. It was like less than 0.5%. And, that's the thing about Bill Gates, right? He wants to make it, by the way, illegal to misinform, right? He's like, well, we've always had restrictions on free, and he talks with his hands, which is the first sign of a liar. And he's talking like this.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm making it up. But he does have grandiose hand gestures, which is it. It is a bad sign. He said we've always had restrictions on speech. You can't threaten someone's life, and you shouldn't be allowed to misinform someone on vaccines to make them hesitant. What did you just conflate? You just conflated death threats against someone and talking about the vaccine. Do you see that? And he's a number one investor. And so people don't know this, but as soon as Bill Gates, he invested $50 million in Pfizer, and then it went up during COVID, and he cashed out at $550 million. And as soon as he cashed out, he started shitting on the vaccine. I don't know if you saw the video, but I play this on my show all the time. He said, well, we didn't know at the beginning that it had a low fatality rate. And that it affected mostly just the elderly, kind of like the flu, but a bit different. Now, they don't play that on MSNBC, CNN, Fox. They don't play that anywhere, right? I play it on my show, right? Which is why I'm borderline content. But there it is. I mean, and I'm like, well, why would, and he's like, yeah, well, there was a lot of problems with the vaccine. They weren't infection blocking. They didn't have long term. And I'm like, whoa. All he had to do was cash in his stock, and he immediately starts telling the truth. But I'm like, I bet there's something else up. And soon enough, or immediately after that, he started selling this new vaccine that you inhale through your nose. And he said, these are better. These are infection blocking, and these are long lasting. And I'm like, well, let's see. He's invested in the company that's making that out of India.
But why? I mean, this is the point where I get religious, because I don't understand why someone like Bill Gates or Larry Fink or really any of these people who have multiple $1 billion would care about making more money. I think it's really diseased. That is money worship. But I'm not against being rich. I like making money, I guess, but not that much. But some. I like not being in debt. Okay, I get that. I want people to have more money. But if you've got billions of dollars, why would you spend any time making more? I think that's really sick.
Well, I think that it becomes it's a game to these. It's what gives their life meaning. Where they don't have any other meaning, right? I mean, except for covering up his trips to Jeffrey Epstein's island.
They don't have any other meaning.
There's nothing. What else is there? And it's control. He's a maniac, right? That people, because he wears a crew neck sweater and glasses, they think he's a nerd and he's a good person. Just like Rachel Maddow wouldn't lie to you. She's gay. Gay people don't lie. Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes.
Gay people don't lie.
That's why they got those people.
Trans, yes.
That's why they got those people.
Oh, what? Did I headshot him?
Exactly you wouldn't think
Come
they would
on,
lie,
dude. That
and that's why they
headshot was like
hired them.
literally
And then they
where the
go along.
camera
So
was.
same
I don't think it was
thing
fast enough though.
Bill Gates.
Gay people don't lie.
He wasn't an inventor. He wasn't particular. But he was a good monopolist, and he knew how to crush other businesses. He didn't write the code. He bought the code, and he knew how to become a monopolist. Right? Remember, there were times when people were throwing pies in his face. Do you remember that?
Very well.
And the media had turned against him, and so he had well, I can't let this happen. So then he started by the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. He started buying off media companies, and he started starting journalism schools and people. Yeah, stuff like that. So, like, for instance, PBS NewsHour didn't have like a science segment. He funded it, right? And so he would.
Bill Gates funded PBS science coverage.
Yeah. So he's there funding the creation of the research for a vaccine. He then funds the coverage of that, and then he funds the NGO that's going to distribute the vaccine. I mean, he's got it coming and going. You know that he's co-opted the media. That's why he's seen as a media darling now. People think he's a great guy. You know, I've had, again, people say, Jimmy, he's just trying to end malaria in Africa. He's trying to...
Fucking hell.
I'm like, well, if you listen to exactly what has happened, and why there's certain countries that don't want to do business. In fact, I think there's lawsuits against him in other countries. And if what he actually did in Africa, you listen to Bobby Kennedy. He'll tell you what. I'm not an expert on it, but I've listened to Bobby Kennedy talking. It's nefarious, it's gross, and it's egregious. So I think he's just a megalomaniac, and yeah, I think that doesn't go away, right? That's where he gets his life meaning from.
But these, I guess what I'm saying is,
what about Jeff Bezos? He hasn't made enough money. He's not stopping. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. I mean, come on.
What do you make of, speaking of Bezos,
and all these guys who care about global warming, like Jeff Zuckerberg, or Mark Zuckerberg? Did you see his new yacht? It's
he cares about global warming.
Because he cares about. It's got 4 diesel engines on it, but I bet he's got an electric stove on it.
I think the purpose of those yachts is, well, to go to the south of France in the summertime, which is fun, but also it's to escape the mess that they're making now.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But Zuckerberg's is 5 feet shorter than Bezos because, he's a man of the people.
So what do you make? So Bezos's paper, the Washington Post, which is the official organ of the intel agencies and has been for many, many decades, refused to endorse Kamala Harris. And Bezos has taken, Bob Kagan, one of the dumbest people in Washington, Toria Nuland's husband, former coworker of mine, truly a mouth breather, like an idiot. But he resigns in protest because democracy is dying in darkness because they didn't endorse Kamala Harris or something. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's funny to watch the liberal class wake up to the fact that, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to have a handful of billionaires run our media. It's like, oh, what? You mean he's doing this for business interests? Yes. That's why he's doing this because he wants to continue his billions and billions of dollars of contracts with the CIA and the government, and he's afraid that Trump will step in the way of that. Plus, he's now wanted to do the space. That's why Elon Musk is a threat to him, right? And doing contracts with the government for space exploration and that kind of stuff. That's what this is about. That's exactly what this is about. And so the same thing happened with the LA Times, They're like, oh, there's another billionaire that owns it. Maybe we shouldn't have billionaires. And so they were okay with it as long as he was going along. Do you think Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post because he's committed to the truth? Are you kidding me? He's got there because he needs to manufacture
change plans.
consent. He's got that because he wants to control the narrative. That's what
Gotta
that's
go.
about. And
Uber has that 6% up 20. Nice, buddy.
They were okay with
yeah,
it,
buddy.
right?
Nice, man.
How does this
that deal has been pretty good. I'm gonna sign off though, my dude.
It's got a bunch of
I gotta go.
Rich white ladies obviously being the pivotal component, but lots of others: poor black people, immigrants, gays.
But it is falling apart.
Here's just my meta view of it as a complete outsider. These groups don't have common interests. So I'm not really sure, other than like hating straight white men, which is not really a reason to have a party over time. It's not that interesting for me.
See, I'm thank you,
really.
Enjoy your food.
How could you hold that coalition together?
They're just doing it with propaganda and hatred and the fear, right? Fear works, and
But is it falling apart?
well, I'm pretty sure I saw a headline the other day that said that Trump is winning the Hispanic vote.
That's like unbelievable.